So one of the things that's always been a little bit difficult to deal with in Blender was origin and setting up origins. And so I started to get a little creative with how I was personally dealing with origins. To just kick this example off, I'm just going to Shift D, duplicate this cube, select them both, select difference, press F9, and we're going to change this to an inset. But we're also going to change it to an inset slice and just lower the thickness a little bit. So if we press 1 in order to turn off collection 2, we can select this object in numpad slash to look at this in local mode, and you see that this is just a slice. And if we press H to hide it, you see that it left a nice little area underneath. So basically for this object, I would need the origin to actually go to this area in order for me to continue on with this the way that I would like to play with it. So a fun hotkey in Blender is pressing Ctrl and comma to turn on the origin. And with this, you can actually press G and translate it. And I'll press Ctrl Shift Tab, and we will jump on edge, and I'll press G, and we're just going to snap it to this edge. And we could press Ctrl comma to turn that off, and we're now able to rotate it. But we see that, you know, because it's a boolean and because it's a complex boolean at that, we need to press Q and uniqueify in order to make this operation something that we can manipulate. And so now we've actually set up this object able to be manipulated. And so, you know, that process wasn't so bad, but, you know, let's continue with it. So I'm just going to Shift right click, place my mouse here, and we will bring about this shape, and we'll select them both, choose difference, press F9, change it also to an inset. Sometimes I'm just really lazy, I'll just F9 my way to an inset, and we will inset slice this as well. And let's select this object, press Control period, and because I've done this so much, I actually have gotten pretty fast at it, and we'll just snap this origin to this location. And let's just press Control comma to turn that back off. We'll press Q, go under operations, uniqueify, and now this object is able to flap up. So we have these objects that are going to be able to keep flapping up because we've sliced them to do so. And so that's really kind of the foundation behind my relationship with dealing with origins. However, in some cases I would actually perform a cut. Let's just turn this into a slice, and in order to get my origin exactly where I would want, I would just go under operations, shift click smart apply, and under smart apply clone, just select the edge, snap the cursor there, delete it, select this object, shift S, origin to cursor, and then from there I can uniqueify and continue on with my onslaught. So there's multiple ways for us dealing with origin. In fact, Shift S is one of my favorite ways of dealing with origin, and by no means we're attempting to replace that, but just letting you know kind of what it's like dealing with origins in Blender just on the fly, and just kind of our starting point, or at least from how I see it. So we'll just do it one more time. For this object, we'll do it the classic way where we press Control comma to enable this baby, and we'll just snap it there, and Control comma to get rid of that, and we'll uniqueify it, and now we have this piece able to also rotate out. And so, you know, just to knock the demo out early, let's have some fun with this. So I'm going to Shift A, add an empty, and we want to press Control tilde, and in our helper we have our object settings, so I'm just going to turn on in front because we don't want to lose sight of our empty, but I don't want to move it from where it is. And so with this object, let's just add a constraint. I love constraints. Constraints are one of my favorite things in Blender to play with. I just give it a little bit of time, and every time it teaches me something new. And so we want to map the location from Z, maybe 0.2 to 0.3 on the Z, and we want to map it to the rotation based on the Z, so we don't need any other axes enabled. Notice that these dark out, and let's just raise our empty. And for this object, we probably want to rotate it on the X. So we see that because our empty is already rotated, we're able to move it. And so now we've basically have set this up. So we now set up our first layer of movement. Let's move this up, and let's select this object, but this time we're going to make it easier. We'll select both of these, choose copy constraints to select it. And so now we've copied this constraint, but the way that we copied it isn't going to actually work out. So instead of rotating it on the, I guess, X, everything's Z to me now, Z vision, we're going to rotate it on the Y, and we're going to change it from 0.3 to 0.4. And so now we have this system where basically this will rotate, then this will rotate, just really having some fun with it. And now for this object, because we've set our origin, we can select it, select this object. Notice that the selection order is reverse of booleans, just one of those Blenderisms. Sometimes the selection order is just different, but that's just Blender. So let's actually raise this from 0.4 to 0.5, and let's see what we're looking at. And we see that this actually rotated backwards. So we'll select this, home, minus 180 to make it negative. And let's try that again. And this is where we are so far. So continuing with this object, we'll select this object, and just throwing it back to a classic, and we see that it rotated the opposite direction. So let's remove the negative, and let's bring it down again. And we actually want this other piece to rotate last. So we look at this, we're at 0.4, 0.5. We'll change this from 0.5 to 0.6. It's like a imaginary timeline that I'm keeping up with in my head as I'm dealing with this stuff. And so now I can actually lower it, and that is basically the result. So I've been doing a lot of randomness on Twitter, just kind of tweeting out about just, randomness happening inside of Blender. But let me introduce you guys to set origin, just a really quick introduction. Let's just take a shape, press E, we'll slice that off, right? And let's decide where we want to set our origin, probably here. We press Q, go under our options for set origin, and click, and done. And we also want to uniquify this piece, of course, but now we can actually rotate that piece out. So let's select this piece, select a piece similar, and let's see how it looks so far. And we probably want to actually rotate this piece last. So this one will go from 0.7 to 0.8. And admittedly, this can definitely get a bit confusing. So I try to do these actually in one sitting while my brain's really on top of it, because otherwise I'll start getting caught up in the arbitrary number ranges. But it really is so fun watching it come together when you're playing with it. So to just wrap up this small section of the demo, in the latest Blender, they actually added the ability to add a grease pencil object, which I was using these and just putting modifiers on it, but they actually have collection line art. And when you click on this, it actually will give you a line art actually associated with your collection already. So if we Shift A, add a camera, and we put our camera back, we actually have the object already in view just like we would like. And so when it comes to rendering these things, I've just been putting them on flat, setting my viewport to be white. There's a whole slew of questions I have about their renderability and how to get them to F12 properly, but that's a talk for another day, and I don't want to show that part while I'm struggling in the video itself. But let's look for occlusion, range, and usually playing with the range will help me get where I want it, but looks like we also got to raise the angle a little bit. And I've been slightly changing up my workflow on this every time because, there's really no right or wrong way to do it, but it's definitely a little fun getting better results every time you try. In fact, let's start playing with our occlusion. I feel like it should be doing something in this case. If we go too high, start showing us absolutely everything geometrically, but I'm just wondering why it's not showing us all the little corners of all the line art. So let's select an object, tab into edit mode, come back out, grab this object, and as we move it, we see everything flip into place. We could also adjust the color and the shading, because right now everything's really flat looking on this white background. And so now when we lower to empty, this is the result that we're getting. Of course, turn off gizmo display. Voila. And that's how you would set something like that up. Just a small 10-minute detour. Sorry about that, but we got it done in a timely fashion.